Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is the Daily Medicine Transmission for May 13th, 2021. Whew, Jupiter's moving into Pisces today, guys. This is, yay. Yay. It is the co-rulership of Jupiter to be in Pisces. Of course, Neptune rules Pisces, which is where Neptune is. But Jupiter coming into Pisces is going to give so much more expansion and energy and, beneficence to the collective emotional transcendent experience that we're all having. Because, Pisces in the 12th house, it's the end of the line. So welcome back to my subscribers, my listeners, my audience. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for supporting this channel. You truly are the lifeblood of this channel and this content every day. If you're new here, welcome. It's so great to have you. And if you find this information inspiring, helpful, and you want to support the channel, any way that you interact with the content is actually supportive. So subscribing to the channel, hitting the like button, sharing and commenting, all of those actions are very supportive to independent content creators like myself, and it signals to the AI algorithm that this content is meant to be spread out to a larger audience. So thank you in advance, and let's get right into today's transmission. Our lack of power is based on perception. And of course, Jupiter is certainly very expansive and represents a leadership quality, more like a manager, right? Jupiter is a manager, a great managerial, archetype, right? Jupiter represents Zeus and Jupiter in Roman mythology, and we are looking at the largest planet in our solar system, and certainly has the most density to be an entire gas planet, and also have its own form because it's so dense. So there's a sense of, again, like I said, Jupiter is a great manager, right? Saturn might be the board, but Jupiter is the CEO and the manager. And so it's big picture ideas, right? The truth, the defender of our collective belief system and values. This is what Jupiter represents. And it's always expanding. It's always, like I said, managing, advocating. It's a real representative of those collective values. Jupiter is a great lawyer, okay? The 9th house, too, is the Sagittarian house, which is interesting because this is where the South Node is right now. And so there is something to be said for this alchemical process and the coalescence of the truth that we come to find in the 8th house in Scorpio into some sort of alchemical process. The understanding, the 9th house is our dissertation in some ways, and Jupiter is this professor type of figure, but really much more of a manager. It's not about transmission of energy. It's about supporting and expanding on these ideas and defending them if necessary, which is why Jupiter makes a great lawyer. So Jupiter moving into Pisces today, into this realm of rulership that it shares with Jupiter's brother, Zeus's brother, Poseidon or Neptune. They are now in Neptune's territory. So this experience, and I will say that Jupiter is going to go retrograde, is going to move back into Aquarius. So we're not full on into this zone yet. Just getting a taste of what it will be like to have Jupiter full time in this zone, expanding on the actual transcendent experience, the emotional experience, the completely unboundaried experience of the collective. And there's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot to be said that is positive and negative, because it all exists in Pisces, all of it. And the karma that results from all of our actions come to fruition in the 12th house in Pisces. There's no escaping escaping it. And the very first degree of Pisces is like a farmer's market. Everything that we have done over the course of the cycle, of a yearly cycle, for instance, where we have sown our crops and we have cultivated them and brought them into harvest. And when we bring them to market, that is the first degree of Pisces, the commingling and the commerce of everything that everyone in this collective situation has to offer. And Jupiter is there to manage the whole thing and really offer some support and advocacy and represent this process. So in some ways, it's kind of like the relaxation of, we can kind of rest easy because there is this now management energy that is here in this collective experience, especially the collective unconscious, which is what Pisces represents. And then Neptune here too, just dissolving it. In some ways, we really do even more now have to trust this process that's unfolding. But we also have this benefic, good fortune, expansive energy of Jupiter in our corner now. And I think that this is going to, depending on how you see it and how you work with it, can be very much an advocate for our own expansion and our own expansion of consciousness collectively, right? The 12th house in Pisces is not about just us individually. It's about the collective unconscious and the collective experience. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So other things to talk about astrologically, let's just look right at the chart today to see what's going on, because there not only are we having Jupiter in Pisces today, and by the end of today, that will be the capstone, really. We also have at the beginning, right, much earlier today, let's go back a little bit here. We had the sun in a sextile to Neptune in Pisces. So this Piscean energy is not necessarily off the table or just relegated to Jupiter. We have the sun at 23 degrees, rounding up for the Sabian symbol, 23 degrees Taurus in a sextile. Remember, this is the moon was in a sextile to Neptune at the new moon. The new moon in and of itself was only within a 1 to 2 degree orb of Neptune itself. And so this whole new moon that represents the spiritual inspiration that comes after the crisis. Oh boy, we're going to see a real lack of power at the heart of today, a real lack of power that comes from some very sobering realizations that are coming in our personal lives, in the collective as well. Remember, they're inseparable at this point. Whatever's going on for you personally, in your personal life, in your spiritual journey, in your emotional healing, in your work, your career, your family life, anything that you're experiencing on the micro will in fact be reflected back to each of us from the macro. And this really gives us a good insight on where we are collectively headed and what we each have to do individually to be part of this process and a conscious co-creator of this process. So the sun is now in a sextile to Neptune. So whereas it might have been much more of a emotional, intuitive, under the surface type of experience with the moon in Taurus in the sextile, now the sun is here, and the sun is the blossoming of our nature, the expression of our full creativity and sovereign nature. The center of our solar system and the giver of all life on this planet is in fact the energy that comes from the sun, and it's unconditional, without conditions, gives and gives and gives, because it's the essence of the sun. Just like when we are fully tapped into our own spiritual nature, when that Kundalini energy is activated and moves through a vessel that is prepared for that awakening energy, then we are also able to give unconditionally. So, and the position of Neptune is very much about that, surrendering something of ourselves in order to substantiate a much more collective goal, right? Being like a medium, for instance, where our own individual consciousness steps aside and allows for this, unpalpable in some ways, but very real collective representation to come forward. And Neptune, of course, has just been dissolving everything that it touches. And so even in this situation, it's actually Neptune is supporting the process of dissolving our own ego in some ways to give us the to give us the space, to help us provide the space for this new aspect to come in. And when we have really painful realizations, sobering realizations, and there can be some significant melancholy that goes along with that, as we'll see in the intuitive message, it can be very painful, and it can feel like a loss of power in terms of a material way. But as we're going to see, it's all part of this bigger picture, and the lack of power is, in fact, indeed a result of our own perception, because if we see the bigger picture, why we're here, what we agreed maybe to experience coming into this particular life, especially right now, because we are on such an incredible precipice of evolution and expansion for humanity, right? We're going through the process of waking up to our divine nature as a species. And once that happens, then everything else falls into place after. And we're still learning that. We're still learning that in a very real, fundamental way. So when the sun is in a sextile, right, we are expressing ourselves through and giving of ourselves, expressing and giving of ourselves fully from this place that this natural process, very natural process over time of pressure and heat that creates what, like valuable gems and minerals, for instance, is coming up to the surface. And there's an aspect of us that is now acknowledging how valuable that process has been and giving it some measure of certification. It's like going to a gem shop or a jewelry shop. And in fact, that is the Sabian symbol of 23 degrees Taurus, a jewelry shop filled with valuable gems. The gems were created by a natural process of heat and pressure over time that we had to be weighted. You can't rush the process, and it requires these really intense experiences in order to be created. But it's at this last phase here where we as a society are acknowledging the value and placing a material value on it by polishing those gems, by maybe wrapping it into some sort of pendant or jewelry in and of itself, and then presenting it. And this is us. We have been put under pressure and heat and are the valuable gem now. And the expression is going to come through from this certification socially of what that actually means to us. And this can really, again, we can invest this so much into where Neptune is, like I said, dissolving pretty much everything other than the vessel in which we can substantiate this conscious ideal. So this is incredible transit to start the day. You can see here 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so overnight in our dream state, especially with Neptune in Pisces, right? What is been brought to our awareness in the more liminal space, in those dream states, and the realm of the imagination is very much part of Pisces. So, and, when people talk about, doing shamanic work or intuitive work, psychic work, and they have to learn to trust their imagination, because that really is the vessel in which we get these insights. It's through imagination. And so some people think that's just making stuff up, but really, what's the difference? Like, if we can imagine it, then its potential to be real is somewhere. So incredible certification of everything on an expressive level and giving of ourselves. Finally, it's like this final moment. And then with Jupiter coming into Pisces today as well, it's also going to have a lot of support in the realm of the collective experience, like the lived collective experience. Aquarius, for as much as it represents the collective, it is the energy that moves through the collective. It's our ability to be in coherence through our third eye and our perception of nature and how we're all connected together. Pisces is very experiential. It's very emotional. It's very much in the soup itself, embedded in, swimming in the ocean. And so when we are able to master that mystical side of ourselves, then we can float there, we can tread water there, we can swim there. And when we can't, we talked about this yesterday about the Kundalini activation. If it is not in a proper vessel, right? If there's no training, preparation, guidance, understanding of what to expect and how it's going to change your life, then this is where psychosis really develops. And this specifically, this substantiation, people have been really used, I think, many of us at different times as well. But this is becoming much more clear to me, at least, that many people in their unconscious desires are being utilized to bring about a particular end that is has some nefarious intentions. So, and that's part of reality here. We have to balance the recognition of the positive and negative. And this is what Gemini is all about. And as you see here, that's a great segue into the fact that we have all this Gemini now: Venus, the moon, North Node, and Mercury. Sun is not far behind. Okay. Now, one thing I do want to share real quick, just to go back to this algal type of energy. This is also around the time. This is actually earlier, 2:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we're looking at, last night on the West Coast, very late, 11:30, we have Black Moon Lilith in conjunction with what? Fixed star algal. Oh, it just keeps coming up. The head of Medusa just keeps coming up. And the Pleiadian aspect, because now this is where the Pleiades is. And that's something to keep in mind too. We're going to go back to this with the sun in just a minute. But the Black Moon Lilith in a conjunction with Algol, what does that mean? In a trine to retrograde Pluto in Capricorn. So again, now we're dealing with something so much deeper than even our own subconscious and emotional landscape, our instinct and our self-preservation, and this very direct connection to the feminine receptive aspect of the planet herself, right? Coming directly from the living soil and wanting to protect that and preserve that, and not even realizing when we are unconscious of that, how we act out in order to do that. Again, this is, the painful realizations, the release of that identity that has been on the surface as a representation of our trauma, being out on the surface, right? The snakes for hair, right? The ability to turn someone into stone is so strong here. And now we have Black Moon Lilith, which is probably one of the most, probably is connected the most strongly with this archetype of Medusa. So she is not even realizing, that, she's going to preserve herself no matter what, even though she's a Gorgon, even though she is able to turn anything living into stone. She represents the toxicity of our own unresolved trauma coming out and acting. She's going to preserve herself no matter what. So just keep that in mind today as we are seeing that this is perfectly well supported by Pluto in Capricorn, just destroying the old guard. Now is in retrograde. So even going back and making sure that every piece of this process is being dug up and destroyed since last March. This is where Pluto goes retrograde back to. So now let's keep on this particular aspect of holding and preserving and protecting, because now that the sun has had that sextile to Neptune we talked about, it's now moved on to the next degree. So let's look at this chart again, and we can move a little further into the morning, right, which is where we are now. It's about 9:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as you see, the sun now, about 10 a.m., is moving into the 24th degree. So now the sun is getting into not only Pleiadian territory, so in the next couple of days, we're going to have huge Pleiadian activation constellations. So Pleiadian starseeds, be mindful because the sun is going to come around to the Pleiades, and the sun acts as a stargate. A lot of stars act as stargates and portals. They have so much energy and so much density and so much power within their process. It's a gigantic nuclear furnace, according, if you've ever heard the song by They Might Be Giants, it's fantastic because it really does actually explain exactly what our sun is and stars are. A gigantic nuclear furnace, a natural nuclear furnace. Now that the sun is moving into the next degree, the thing about substantiated and confirmed material reality is, and the worth, right, is also the very human and very not even human. This is more about physical need and material need as a physical being in this universe. For as much, when we discover and certify the worth of something that has developed naturally and our connection to it, as we talked about with the sun at the prior degree in its sextile to Neptune. From there, this degree is about the aggressive tendency to protect in order for survival. It is and it fits so well. This whole dynamic fits so well into where Lilith is today, and even where Venus is. We're going to move into that too, because Venus at 5 to 6 degrees Gemini, keep in mind, this will be the degree of the sun at the full moon lunar eclipse on the 26th of May. 5 to 6 degrees. What is this? This is about drilling for oil. This is about ambition to get down into the deeper structures of the consciousness that are have been, again, this concept. Where does oil come from? Where do fossil fuels come from? Well, it comes from living, organic, carbon-based life and material that is subjected to pressure and heat over time, and then it becomes the fossil fuel, right? Especially oil and coal. So Venus is at the degree the sun will be at this full moon. Drilling for oil, the ambition in order to get down into and to collect what has been under the surface that can be a source of energy and awareness, and bringing it to the surface, drilling for oil. So Venus, our sensitivity, who we love, what we value in Gemini, she is now really bringing our value into this, to this search, right? This search in terms of ideas and thought forms, data, communication, expression, right? We talked about communication as yesterday with listening. Are we listening and hearing as much as we are talking and expressing? It's important, but this ambition aspect is going to come up really strongly today with all of these factors in place. Not only that, we have the moon still moving through Gemini today. So I'm going to talk about those transits in 1 second. So it's important to realize that there is a natural tendency to want to protect and to use aggression to survive in a material world as part of the natural process, especially when our society comes to a point where it's certifying the worth of all of these natural aspects, the gems, the minerals, the crystals that then come into a jewelry shop and are made valuable to us socially. Now remember where Uranus is in Taurus, the young couple window shopping, right? It is the fascination with the ego consciousness of what it can have. So there is a lot of restlessness around this concept because we want what we see. We want what we see as possible, and there's restlessness, and there is a lot of really dynamic energy here, and the consistent disruption in a material way is really aggravating it, but it's also stimulating transformation to show us that we can have it, that and that our path of awakening collectively is influenced by. It's influenced by our fascination with what we can have, our desire to have, the socialization of our desires in some ways. So there's a lot of ambition there. And when we feel disempowered, when we feel like that we need to protect ourselves at all costs, this is where we will act out in a way in order to preserve and protect ourselves. And it's really that lack of power is based on our perception. And this is why Neptune. Yes. This is why Gemini and understanding Gemini is so important right now. So let's talk about it, because the moon is still in Gemini and it's going to be making some transits today. So it's going to meet the North Node, the newly open lands, the pioneering aspect. So we're going to feel, the joy of new beginnings, right? We know that we're being pulled in this direction in order to evolve. Our souls are being pulled in this direction, the head of the dragon. And then the moon herself, we're talking about her nodal axis. She's going to meet her own North Node. And we are going to feel a very personal connection to this newly open land and opportunity of new beginnings, and knowing that we're being pulled there. So again, here's even more ambition. Here's even more of a draw to something new, and to engage with new ideas, new thought forms, and to sensory and perception is part of the third house and Gemini archetype, right? Perception. And this is where we get to start to make some changes here if we're feeling in lack, because we do have the opportunity in this moment, which is already past, right? The moon is already past the North Node, as you see here, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So there is this moment of recognition within us of where this is all going, and knowing that this is teaching us something for our soul to evolve and to grow, that what we perceive as lack is really just opening up new opportunities for us. But that's really hard to see when we're embedded in the physical material world and we see that like we're losing something, or we think we're losing something. And this is why Neptune in Pisces is so important to understand right now, because that is an essential part of the substantiation of the collective process, is the giving of ourselves, or giving of something of value in order to substantiate that. Just like the medium gives their own conscious awareness away and steps aside in order for this message, message, or this messenger, or this conscious ideal or unconscious desire to make itself known. So what else is happening is that the moon is also going to trine our friend Saturn. Oh, there's a lot of melancholy involved here today. And it's really, with Saturn, there's always the potential for melancholy and depression, because you are hitting a wall, basically, when you are dealing with Saturn. And Saturn is still moving in its prograde in Aquarius right now. And so we are still moving through this tunnel, right? The tunnel that represents us taking the initiative and have the ability to actually bypass what would normally be a natural evolutionary process, and human beings have the ability to consciously attend to this and put it into gear and penetrate through all of our obstacles and delays. And so the moon, again, is going to trine Saturn, right? Giving our emotions some structure and some seriousness and some form, right? Giving it some form. We can feel it. We see that we are able to do this. We acknowledge that we are able to do this, and how it's a natural part of the human progression. And Saturn, it certainly can be melancholy. It can certainly lead to depression. And I can definitely feel that there is a sense of like, I don't want to say hopelessness, but there is this melancholy, and there's kind of like, is it ever going to change? Are we ever going to get there? And just know that this trine that's happening today, as you see at noon Eastern Standard Time, so it's coming, is at least giving us, it's giving us the ability to just accept that we are in fact bypassing and penetrating obstacles and delays in order to get through to where we are going a lot faster than just climbing up over the mountain. Because the reality is that's where Pluto is right now, is the path up to mountain. And that is, making that unavailable anyway. So we kind of have to go through, because there's no real pathway up and over the mountain anymore. Pluto is making very damn sure of that. And that's what Pluto does, destroys in order to transform. So, and then beyond that, the moon is then going to meet Mercury. Okay. Something to consider here. We've gone from this moment of, realizing that the real way to do this is through the moving past the physical nature and social distinction. We talked about that yesterday with the 14 degrees of Gemini. When Mercury was in a trine to Saturn, letting us know that the real way to do this is to be able to rise above all of the physical and social blockages and be able to communicate directly through resonance with each other. This is essential. And so when the moon is meeting Saturn in a trine in this location, so it's also now something that we are feeling within us. So something that we can kind of express our own consciousness through is this telepathy aspect. And yeah, it can be quite literal. I think that that's a big part of it, but it also means that we have to meet each other directly and without any outside influence in order to communicate through resonance, right? This is how we communicate telepathically. Oh man, there is a great video that is now making the rounds again, and it's been up for a while, but it's this video about the volunteers coming to Earth, the starseed volunteers, and it's these two little girls that are communicating as starseeds, but they're communicating telepathically, and it's really interesting to watch. And I would say, aside from the message about being the volunteer, because I think that part of this Saturn aspect is really making it very heavy for a lot of people. And so the way to do that is to learn to connect through resonance, rather than getting mired down in the physical aspect of communication. Now, the moon meeting Mercury today as well, the ability to actually test some of these ideas is really strong, right? 15 degrees. Now we've moved into, we're in the very last degree of this discovery phase. And then we move into the exterioration phase of Gemini, the last half of Gemini. So this coming together of the moon and Mercury today, in this very last degree of the discovery period is the testing ground, right? It's one thing to have the insight or the dream or the communication or the download or the perception or whatever. It's a totally other thing when we have to put it up against the objective reality. And one way this can happen is that there needs to be some measure of clarification with like-minded individuals. So when we start to see a pattern here of people's insights and people's own research and their expression of it and what they're discovering, when we're all starting to discover things together, it will be what validates what we are coming to. So there has to be an objectivity in order to accept the validity of great dreams, great inspirations, all of these discoveries that have been happening. Now, when the moon and Mercury come together, boy, that's going to be like an insight, like an intuitive insight and a download at the same time that our transcendent experiences have been tested and clarified through communication. A clean and open mind, eager to test what is experienced, by actually talking to other people. And all discoveries must have validity tested. And you're going to see this in many different ways. But with the moon, we are really talking about our own individual experiences being met with the master of the mind. And so supporting that process as well, giving us the tools and the ability to really actually meet people where they're at and test our own discoveries. Oh, wow. So a lot of ambition and survival energy. Mars in Cancer has moved on to the next degree, and this is where our character is really going to be tested for sure. And one thing I also want to say is that the moon also was in a sextile to Chiron. Let's go back to there for 1 second, because this is important too. Because again, this is about investing. 12 degrees Gemini is that liquidation of the past, like liberation of the ghosts of the past, and sextile to Chiron, right, in Aries, and allow us to really, when we are able to do that, then we can see everything in a new perspective, and it allows us to heal. It allows us to address these vulnerable parts of ourselves, this wounding of who we actually are as a subjective experience and a subjective person. We can realize that instead of feeling the tension when a cosmic order is put up against what humans create as law and order, for instance, rather than feeling guilt around being able to allow this cosmic order to really define our sense of self, rather than feeling ashamed of that, we can, when we completely liberate ourselves from the ghost, the residual aspects of our past, if we're able to move towards what it is that we are, the new opportunities, then we can really do some healing as well. So again, lack of power is only a matter of perception, because really what we're doing is letting go of the past situation in order to make room for the new. This is not really that, groundbreaking of revelation here, but it's very spelled out here in today's astrology. So as we usually do, let's start looking at the intuitive reading so that we can bring these archetypes into just a whole new level. So we do this. All right, friends, here we go. So here is our reading. As you see, there's a couple things that are not new. The shark again. I mean, come on, guys. It's time to trust your gut and your instincts instead of what everybody is telling you. And that's becoming more and more obvious. We have the Three of Swords. That's not new. We have the Ten of Discs. That's also not new. But something that is new is this Four of Discs, the power being in the heart. I haven't seen this card in a while. So this really does signal to me that a big power structure is going to really dissolve itself as a result of this causal factor. So let's look at it up close. The Three of Swords, upright. So of course, this is sorrow. When the three comes to a synthesized and harmonious position, it's usually not something we really want to see. Saturn in Libra, there's that Saturn and melancholy aspect. The truth behind it's, ignorance is bliss, or idiots are happier people type of thing. This is the truth about that, because when you have to see things for what they really are from a mental perspective, which is what Libra is, and wisdom in some ways, that it is painful, very painful, brings about depression and melancholy. A hard decision has to be made. So we see this as this causal factor. So something in our lives has led us to have to see things for what they really are. There's a painful realization, there's sorrow, a hard decision has to be made either within us or in our life. And there is a melancholy when we recognize the unveiled truth. We put a lot of layers on top of the truth so that we can protect our ego consciousness. And it's really our ego consciousness protecting our psyche by putting these layers up. But Saturn is just like, well, there's only so much of that you can do. And in fact, it happens pretty quickly along the Swords suit, where we are just like, oh, loss of illusion, a false illusion, but illusion nonetheless, that we had kind of built up our castles made of sand in some ways. So we do have to make a hard decision, and we have to address this realization. Now, when it's upright like this, it does suggest that there is a learning potential here, and that we are accepting it for what it is and not ignoring it, which is something that had been the case last week with the Three of Swords reversed about not accepting it. I have a feeling that we're going to see some more truth unveiled that just cannot be avoided, even with our own consciousness or our own ways of bypassing things. This is, again, Saturn is just like, listen, this is what it is. We have to get through this mountain because we can't go over it anymore, because those pathways are absolutely being destroyed so that we can evolve and we can bypass and move through obstacles and delays. And it's not easy. And it's very painful in some ways, depending on where it is happening in your chart and how it's aspecting other parts of your life. So at the heart, this is our causal factor. So at the heart of the moment here, here's our Four of Discs, the Sun in Capricorn, power. I mean, look at this. You have all these alchemical symbols in each corner. You have a square that is a moat, and you have the sun at the top. Capricorn representing the pathway into this fortress, essentially. And this is success and establishment and proficiency, all of the Capricorn things, and having a very strong, stable connection with the sun in Capricorn. This is everything we work towards, building some sort of institutional security, right? So what is it when it's reversed? Oh, we're really afraid to lose it. We will hang on tooth and nail. Oh, man, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Greed or overestimation of what we have, but especially in connection to this causal factor of a painful realization, this Four of Discs is like, regardless of the position that you find it in, it looks exactly the same, except the sun is now at the bottom and it's draining out the bottom, right? We have the alchemical symbols in different directions. We have water, fire, air, and earth are just in different directions. So it does seem it still holds power, but at the same time, we are afraid of losing it. There's greed for more. It is very there's resistance to what this represents, but I think it's a real fear of losing power and wanting to hold on tooth and nail to something that is absolutely, being taken away anyways. Pluto is still in Capricorn. So this is at the heart of the matter, right? This is the axis of where we're at energetically and what is happening out in the world, or we are engaged with, out in a cause and effect relationship. So this is the heart of it. This is the axis. And this is the heart of us, right? The heart chakra really is that axis point in some ways. It is the midpoint between the lower three chakras and the upper three chakras. And so it also is the axis of our experience as energetic spiritual beings and the reality we find ourselves in. So there is a very profound sense of fear of loss and power that is at the heart of us today. So, and right now, I mean, this doesn't have to necessarily be today. These messages are not necessarily, they're not necessarily rooted in a very, in a very linear time frame, but it's meant to give guidance for what is going on in this moment. And when you add the astrology, then you start to see how these archetypes that are timeless relate to an actual cycle of time. So where are we energetically? So where we draw our power from, and if you can look at the outcome already, the 10 of Discs is wealth, right? So you have at the center of the reading this power that we are afraid of losing, and Capricorn is very structured and formed. It is Saturn, okay? But where we're headed is this wealth, which is a Virgo energy, because it has to do with our ability to actually put things where they belong and to gather, and it's mutable and malleable. So there is an effect here, an expectation that the gathering in of all of our wealth and resources, coming to fruition, but it's going to come from this energetic polarity that we can tap into. Number one, the Seven of Forces. Now I want you to look here. First of all, we have a Seven of Forces, and at the top we have seven, the fated meeting. So we have two sevens that represent that wild card energy. It's usually the fall from our own ego and allowing in divine intervention, which is the 8. So 7 of forces, the balance. Oh my. So we can draw our power from here, our personal power, rooting into this place. Something that we are subconsciously connected to, but maybe not consciously aware of, is the balance that we have. There's harmony, there's balance, there's justice that we can tap into. All systems in our body and in our life are seeking balance. You can see this. This is very Libra in the sense that it's cardinal. It's a force. So there's energy of creation and action behind it, but it is the scales of justice. Okay. You can see that. Now, it's important to be patient, and we'll see the shark here because it's important to pay attention to the details. We have to do this in order to be balanced. Okay. Justice and reciprocity are energetic. Don't forget that, okay? It's energetic, and energy production is up to us. So again, pay attention to the details, be aware of the details, use your discernment and your instinct in order to pay attention to the details. Know that justice is an energetic process, and reciprocity is energetic as well. So and so it is up to us. So continue to be aware of your thoughts and your actions, your discernment, being very really analyzed to a certain extent, because that's what Mercury and Virgo does, is analysis. You don't get wealth. You don't get a sense of personal wealth of everything that you have at your that constitutes you as a person without analyzing what you know and putting it where it needs to be. It's one thing to know things. That's Gemini all day. Know things. Accumulate knowledge, learning. It's the analysis of all of this that is what Virgo represents, which is a different dynamic. But we need to be balanced, and we can draw our power from this balance by being aware of our thoughts and actions, paying attention to details, knowing that, things need to be transfigured and moved around in order to find balance, okay? Now, when we look at where our conscious attention is, our conscious attention, here's our fated meeting. So you're looking at a major arcana card, number 7 again. So what we are aware of is that this is all karmic, and we agreed to these important relationships coming into our life, whatever they are, because it's been predetermined by us, our higher selves, based on what we want to learn, based on how we want to evolve. The things that we need to learn in order for our soul to evolve is very much what this is about. So, of course, it could be romantic. It could be your twin flame. We've been talking about twin soul stuff, twin flame a couple times. This has come up with another colleague of mine as well as we talk about this. And it's really hard to find information about twin soul and twin flame that hasn't been completely hijacked or romanticized. And I think that's on purpose, personally, because the twin flame and twin soul relationship is something that is meant to be a mirror for each of us, to look at ourselves in the mirror in this other individual that we interact with. And it's different than a karmic soulmate. And this too is a karmic soulmate. So it can go either way. What's important to remember is that our awareness and focusing our attention on what's going on is that this is all predetermined based on us, what we need to learn, what we want to resolve. There are so many karmic contracts that are being fulfilled right now. It's ridiculous how much it's happening, and it's all coming to a head on so many levels, inside and outside. So having our awareness here that this is all predetermined by our higher selves, whatever we meet, and that to keep our growth the priority and honor our karmic course, regardless of what we think we want. That's been really a struggle, I think, too, especially for people that, everybody has their karmic course and is here to fulfill that right now. And it's going to look different for other people, for everybody. And that's something to keep in mind if you're really struggling here. So we have some, like I said, there's the 10 of discs, the wealth, right? The wealth point where all our richest potentials unfold. This is incredible. This is also the end of a material cycle. So keep that in mind as well, is that it's a completion of the work. This is the completion of our karmic work that we came here to do. And while we may feel at the center of things, this fear of our loss of power in response to a certain degree, this painful realization and having to face up to the truth and the depression and melancholy that might come to it, or might be the result of this realization, just know that when we are energetically aligned here, that we reach a point of culmination and completion of this material work, okay? This is really incredible and something to keep in mind as we move forward. So, Seven of Forces. First of all, again, trusting your instincts to discern the truth. We talked about truth yesterday. There's a lot of different opinions. There's a lot of different there's no definitive truth in Gemini other than polarity is nothing more than two sides of the same coin. Polarity is just the experience of separation from source, and there is no truth other than the ultimate truth with Gemini. So perspectives, opinions, ideas, thoughts, learning, knowledge, all of that is on a spectrum of to be experienced, even from the lightest to the darkest. You have to trust your instincts and your gut to discern the truth of the situation in order to be balanced. Now, this is fascinating. Okay, so first of all, that's the third time the shark has come up almost in a row. So this is really signaling to us that we really have to be discerning, right? We really have to take the initiative to not get pulled into all of the stuff outside of us that's meant to keep us off track or to exploit us in order to fulfill somebody else's agenda. We really do have to be on point. And that can feel like we're not doing anything when we are faced with a situation that feels like we're losing power, okay? And I've been feeling this a lot because I have consistently in almost every corner of my life ended up in some sort of leadership position in some way, and to not continue this drive right this moment is really against all of my nature, having all of my Sag in my 10th and 11th house, right? But everything in the chart right now is in the bottom of my chart, the first, second, third, fourth house. It's all about my own individual development in those areas. So what I'm saying is that it's important that we realize that. So the Queen of Roses, right? This is a woman. This is us. This is the divine feminine, right? The water of the water of the emotions, right? Total transference, total transmission, right? This is in some ways a mirror, the Queen of Roses. So when it's reversed, we're stepping out of the role of being a provider or a caretaker of a mother, for instance. And you're going to see, look, the King of Roses is also reversed at the top. So we are really looking at some, what seems like a separation or a separation from these aspects, but really it feels to me that it's meant to really have us engage internally with these archetypes and develop them within us. So the Queen of Roses, maybe you're stepping out of a role and it's time to let it go, right? It's time to let it go when it's reversed. Or there's disharmony and conflict with a woman in your life or the feminine aspect of yourself. Maybe there's conflict within you about playing this role. And when we're talking about balance, when we're talking about discernment, it's really important to be real with ourselves about either this role within us or the role that other people are playing. And if they are really somebody that we want to continue to engage with, and again, the Queen and the King of Roses, I mean, this is very emotional. This is very much connected to the water element. We have Jupiter moving into Pisces today. Neptune in Pisces. And the moon's going to move into Cancer tomorrow, but not until tomorrow night. So that's something we'll talk about much more tomorrow. But the dichotomy here with the Queen and the King being reversed is really striking to me in terms of balance, in terms of fated meeting. And it's not going the way that we want in terms of our emotional relationship to ourselves and to other people. So this is something to consider. Now, when we move up to here's our platypus friend. Stop complaining and focus your attention on the blessings in your life. So this fated meeting with the King of Roses now also reversed. Oh boy, it's just not gonna, I just get this sense that the initial response to all of these people and our own ability to hold our emotional selves is it feels like these roles are actual people in our lives. Or representation out in the world of these aspects. But the fated meeting, right? We're not gonna really, there's a disruption in the relationship with a man in our life, a father, a husband, this emotionally passionate, and nurturing masculine in our life. It's getting flipped on its head. So there's a potential for a new beginning here. And, the platypus is really saying, where do you put your attention with your thoughts? This is very much connected to the seven of forces and the balance. Power flows where we give our attention. And so it's important that we consider the blessings in our life rather than focusing on the lack, right? Stop complaining and focus on what we do have, and realize that even if you don't like it, even if this King of Roses reversed is like, I need to get the hell away from this dude or whoever this represents, know that it's a potential for a new beginning. Realize that, maybe it's just about reconnecting with this part of ourselves. Maybe the fated meeting that we are aware of and are leaving space for is part of that is letting go of this particular dynamic, this King of Roses reversed. So there's a potential for new beginning, old love that hasn't been released. That's also part of it as well. And know that it's karmic, right? And that's, again, stop complaining. Focus on what your blessings are. Realize that even if it's gone wrong, even that it's there's some sort of resistance to this person, and it's time to create new patterns that include self-love. But what the fated meeting is we've decided this already. And so see that for what it is, as a blessing rather than a curse, even if it's uncomfortable. And there, like I said, there's a lot of uncomfortability. There's a lot of sorrow. There's a fear of loss of power. But ultimately, when we are balanced and we see this as a bigger karmic situation, we are in a position to really pull in all of our wealth and really finish out a very material cycle. Wow. Yeah. I feel like those roles of the Queen and the King are going to make themselves way more known as the day goes on, because I think that everybody has this relationship somehow and in some way in their lives that is probably represented by a person or within ourselves. But the court cards usually reference actual people. So, guys, that's the transmission for today. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me and for being here. I so appreciate it. Oh, wow, it's so bright and sunny right now. If you are interested in a reading and or energetic support through Reiki or shamanic energy work, you can reach out through the website, catalystenergies.net. That's in the description box below. You can just click on it and then go to the services tab, and you can pick out a service that really speaks to you. And we can see how all of these energies are affecting your chart and your soul's blueprint. Also, Facebook and Telegram, social media, you can also access that from the description box below. Guys, have a great, great day. I'll be with you tomorrow for the Daily Medicine transmission for the 14th. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. I love you. Bye.